Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested, and for today's show and tell, we got a special guest and some special stuff to show. This is Steve Lin. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you, Norm.
Now, Steve is a longtime friend of the site. He's guested on our podcast, and among many other things, you are a connoisseur of pop culture and technology.
Yes, and this is, like fusion of those two things.
Absolutely. So what we have today, well, a little bit of history, because we're talking Back to the Future.
Right.
Back to the Future 2, Martin McFly puts on the self-lacing.
Yeah, power laces far out.
Those are that Nike Air Mags, as they call them, right?
Yes, and then in fact, you can even see it on the back. They've got this cool late 80s mag.
Oh my gosh. So it's been one of these holy grails of not only technology nerds and film buffs, but also presumably sneakerheads.
Yeah, I mean, it's a seminal moment where you have sneakers featured in a film, right? And Back to the Future 2, there's so many brands in there. There's Pepsi, there's Texaco, there's Jaws, and Nike plays a huge part in that.
Right. So, it almost makes me think back to 2001 and being the first film with real brands.
Right, like Pan Am.
Exactly.
And
and it's one of those things that as a viewer, you're like, okay, that's imagining the year 2015. So far from now, we've got to have those by 2015.
Right.
Well, what you have here is something that was released in 2011.
That's correct.
And this was a limited release?
Yeah, so what they did was there was a petition in the mid-2000s to release these, and this is based off the Tinker Hatfield design. The 2011s were done by Tiffany Beers and Michael Fritten. They're like, you know what, let's do something, and let's build these. And so they made 1,510 pairs, and they put them on auction on eBay with all of the proceeds going to Michael J. Fox's Foundation for Parkinson's Research.
Absolutely, and they sold out very quickly.
Yeah,
huge successful.
Tons
launch.
of bidding. Yeah, I think anywhere between $1,500 and $9,000 per pair over the course of the days. This is a size 10, so I think it was $3,500 or so.
This is what sneakerheads, they know because they want to wear it for
Yeah.
their size, how rare it is, how many they made on secondary markets. They can go up to $10,000.
Of course, yeah. And so these. They raised over $9 million for the foundation, and it was a huge success. And these have now become sort of holy grail shoes for collectors. They don't power lace. These are basically moccasins. This is all. This all has the elastic, but they do light up. And
that was good enough for 2011.
Yeah.
And so these are actually a real pair of shoes, verified. You got the certificate of authenticity.
Yep.
This was what was available in 2011. You mentioned Tinker Hatfield, who famous shoe designer, designed the Air Jordans.
Yeah. So he did the Air Max ones, and then Jordan 3 through 15. So that whole huge era of Jordans is all Tinker Hatfield.
And while he wasn't directly related to this release in 2011, his team, he works at Nike, he'd been developing research for some type of power lacing shoes.
Correct. Right. Yeah, the original movie prop, if you notice, his foot is stuck to the ground because there's all these pulleys and cables underneath that people pulling on that to make the shoe actually work.
Right. Well, fast forward a little bit, and in Tinker Hatfield's lab at Nike, they had been working on something they call the Hyper Adapt.
Right.
Which in 2019 has been released. It is a thing that you can buy if you want to spend $350 on a pair of shoes that do power lace. Did they ever put those in these?
Yeah, so they did a really limited release. They said 1,500 pairs of this. They did a 89 shoe run of the 2016 mags that do power lace. And you couldn't buy them on eBay or anything. You had to buy a raffle ticket. It was $10 per ticket. So you can imagine a lot of people buying a lot of tickets. They raised over $6.5 million that time, and they auctioned off one pair. It went for over $100,000.
Wow.
So, and those shoes now are, I think, over $40,000 a piece if you can find someone who wants to sell.
True holy grails.
Yes.
In the shoe world. Something a little more affordable, but also as rare is what you've brought today.
Yeah.
Because I know people can buy the Hyper Adapts, and there's been a bunch of reviews. We haven't actually, it's our first time seeing them, the function in person, and we're excited to turn them on. But this was recently released as, of course, inspired by the Air Mag colorway.
Yeah, they call it the Adapt BB. BB is basketball, so it's sort of designed for basketball. But they call it Wolf Gray Nobody calls it wolf gray. Like even on StockX, it's listed as the mag because that's what it is. I mean, if it's got the same, it's a kind of jazz pattern and color scheme and everything. So.
Yep. It's not the exact form factor, and
Right.
it is their stylized version. But run me through the functionality, because these are your pairs, and do you wear them?
I have worn them. I didn't wear them too much because I knew we were going to shoot this, but I'm going to wear them after this.
Awesome.
So I'm just going to take off what I'm wearing now.
All right.
So Adapt BBs, they have a motor in the midsole, and then it pulls on this kind of lattice work that's on the upper and the lower. And the cool thing about it is when you first put on the shoe, it starts to cinch. And so you hear this motor and it's starting to tighten up, and it actually gets a little too tight right at first. Like, is it going to keep going? What's happening here? And then it backs off a little bit. And so it tries to adapt to where your foot is. What I thought was really interesting for me is I had custom dress shoes made, and I found out that one of my feet is bigger than the other slightly. And then when it did the adjustment and I looked on the app, there was actually a slight difference between the shoes.
They tell you like there's a quantifiable tension.
Yeah, it's almost like a slider. And so it said, oh, like one of these is actually correct. And so yes, there is an app that connects to your shoe via Bluetooth. You can send firmware updates to your shoe, and you can change the color of the LEDs on the side and all kinds of other stuff. I never thought I'd say I'd be updating the firmware on my shoes.
So you're creating profiles for like, I'm going to get on the court and I want it to be a certain tightness, or maybe I'm casually walking, or I'm entering my house and I want it to loosen up automatically and slip off.
Can you imagine if, like Mr. Rogers had these? He walks into the house and you hear this motor noise and he just pulls his shoe right off.
Geotag, right? Geofenced.
Geofenced. So the amount of tension, I think they were saying like 32 pounds of force, which is kind of like a parachute cord. And the scientists are saying like, oh, well, you want it at one tension for when you're warming up and you start the game, and then by the end of the game, your foot is swelled a little bit, and so you want to have profiles for that. Sure. I mean, clearly, I don't know if there's maybe there's some utility. I don't think any player has actually worn them throughout an entire game. I've seen them in warm-ups and practices, but like not, quarter 1 to quarter 4.
Could you get them too tight? Like, will it stop before it gets it too tight on your foot?
I don't know. I let it stop where it wants to stop. I could move the slider up, but I'm sure there has to be some sort of safety mechanism there, just because it started backing up as soon as like the tension got a little bit too tight, so I'm sure there's a safety mechanism. And there's also actually a battery reserve, so they don't get stuck on your feet, like the battery dies and they're trapped inside your shoe.
So you have a primary battery, a battery reserve, and it's charged via these inductive pads. So
yes.
They're sitting on right now a charger with 2 circles. They'll align them pretty close?
No, you don't. You just kind of sit them on there and then it lights up when it's plugged in.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I was showing this off at work, and someone threw their phone on it just to see what would happen, and it started charging.
So just your very standard Qi charger.
Something
coils,
like
electromagnetic coils. Very cool. Oh my God. Okay, well, we got to get you putting these on.
Right.
We're going to get some shots of that, but these are now maybe the third most rare.
Well, I mean, in the mag universe, yes, but there's clearly a big delta between these.
Yes.
And these they did sell out really fast on sneakers. So if you look at secondary markets like 450, 500 now, retail, I think we talked about, was like $350. They're really cool. They're much lighter than you think. And the fit is great. I think one of the areas where this technology could be really helpful is actually for people who are disabled. They can't bend down to tie their shoes or are unable. Usually you have like Velcro or slip-ons. This will give you a much better fit, and so hopefully we see this kind of trickle down.
Absolutely. It's got to start at the high end.
Yeah, exactly.
For people, for connoisseurs like you. And thank you, Steve, so much for bringing these in for us to take a look. Could I try putting them on?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to do that. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks.